Okay, would anyone like from the second table to tell us a couple of ideas about technology? And we need a mic over here, and it's coming. Thank you, Lee.
That populate, oh, there we go. Like, is it working? Now it's working. The first one that populated, it started with an app, and then we expanded out to virtual reality, right? What would it be like to create a virtual reality program that has a couple different levels? At the base level, it might populate 1 to 3 different examples, and then you get to be a participant in it and see what happens in interactions. Once you have more money and you can build more money, then maybe you get to bring your own problems in. And it can also aggregate all of the responses, the information, and could be very, very valuable there. Is that clear? Should I add more? Okay. That's good. A virtual reality platform or program experience, exactly. Game, exactly. So there are virtual reality rooms that you can go to, but at a certain point, virtual reality is getting to the place where you might be able to buy it and have it in your own house. So that's one.
Your kids get to be teenagers.
The second idea was a podcast, which wouldn't cost as much money, and it would be a great way of perpetuating this type of conversation where people can listen to it daily, see this type of conversation, see it reflected, get it into their bones. And so yes, podcast. Third is CRM system and what we would need to do for the infrastructure. Yes, to go and sell it.
What is CRM?
Client relation management systems. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Oh, one more?
Oh, there were concerns. We were also talking about at the same time, how do we continue to keep the integrity of Convergence without diluting the brand and diluting the things that actually matter most, whilst also looking at the financial implications with all of this. It's expensive, but I believe that you can
Great idea.
just decide the money's going to come and it's going to come.
I like the game. We need some investors in the game. That sounds terrific. All right. I don't think there was anyone else that covered technology, so tell me if I'm wrong. Otherwise, we'll go to tables 3 and 4 on the IP question. Table 3, 1 or 2 ideas about intellectual property.
Hi, I'm Steve, and there was a strong predilection expressed by no less than Rob Fursh that in general we want to spread the word, we want to spread the gospel, we want to maximize exposure to the brand, and therefore there was some skepticism about doing too much to, quote, protect the IP. That being said, there are 3 reasons to protect IP to some extent. Number 1, you don't want somebody to just copy something that you write, particularly if it's bespoke, if it's something that you've been paid for to create, and you give it to somebody, fine. They have the right to use it, but they don't have the right to just take it and give it to someone else. Second, there may be opportunities as you go down this road to monetize your IP, to think of other ways to create revenue streams. And you want to, have the ability to do that at some point in time. Did you want to, Keith? No. Okay. And third, to the extent you do have something that is arguably secret, in other words, it's not generally known, not easy to figure out from the outside looking in, you don't want to eliminate entirely the possibility of saying that you have some ability to keep those innovations, ideas, secret and protect them. So I said, look, the simple answer is you want some kind of a contract when you consult that allows the purchaser of your consulting services the right to use whatever you give them, but doesn't allow them the right to give it to somebody else without permission. And it can be done pretty simply.
That's great, Steve. Thank you. Table 4, do you want to add to the IP question?
Absolutely. I'm Mark Sitter. We took a different approach because we didn't really see a lot of IP that was we were concerned about protecting. We thought that the main values and the skills that Convergence has is based on general principles that are probably not protectable. So really, the main focus we took is what IP could we create that would be monetizable, that would help us out. So for one thing, training materials of all sorts, charts, graphs, information, workflow, sorts of things that all make consulting work better and are very much copyrightable and usable in sales calls as well. Second, we could create some new terms or buzzwords, collaborative cooperation or something like that, and then you can trademark them, and if they're any good, they have to be good and really represent something that people like to use. Seriously, then it's your term and no one else can use that. That is IP that you can protect and keep and use. And third, we thought we could create a diagnostic instrument that individuals or organizations could complete that would show readiness or progress along the scale of collaboration. They could do it before, they could do it after the consulting engagement, they could do it during, whatever it is, and we could offer that on the website for free or as part of the consulting engagement. But the goal would be to get as many people and organizations as possible to complete it, keep that database, offer it on an aggregated basis anonymously, and now you've got benchmarks. So your organization is in the 30th percentile or the 90th percentile of collaboration readiness. And of course, the more input we get, the bigger the database, and the further ahead we are of any competitors who wouldn't have that same information. So those are the main three items. And we also thought that when we talk about consulting, that's usually an organization at a time, and you can train one organization at a time, but you can also train regionally. So this isn't so much of an IP issue as a revenue issue. It's saying you could go to San Francisco, you could go to Boston, you could go wherever, and not try to find one organization, but offer to anybody in the region who wants to learn the process. And that might be a better way to build business, or at least a way to test business, than trying to find just one client.
Awesome, thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Two things. First of all, that was great. And second, congratulations as the new head of the consulting practice.
Oh, great. Well, I do think we need to have a dedicated full-time head
So
to the
do all
practice.
of us, yeah. No, again, your willingness to do this as you did it out in San Francisco with the healthcare project pro bono is beyond belief, so thank you. Let's hear it from Mark,
Thank
the
you.
new head of the practice.
I better give the microphone to somebody else quickly.
All right, we've got 3 more quick reports, and they're all on the pitch question. So we have tables 5, 6, and 8. We'll go in that order. Table 5, something quick on the pitch.
How do you know you won't want to hear more? How does that be quick? Okay, so on the pitch, there were 3 things that we thought should be essential to a convergence pitch. One is emphasize the real results that have come out of this process, because we thought that was probably where most people would come in with doubts. So specific distinctive wins, I won't name them all because in the interest of time, but we have them and they should be emphasized. And the fact that they were unexpected would be clutch. And then number 2 is the process. So we talked a little bit about how this might start as a niche market that targets groups of people who not only know each other, but know each other well enough to believe they could never agree with each other. They come in thinking that they don't even want to come in, and that part of the struggle is getting them to the table, because those are the instances where convergence is the most remarkable, is people who think that they hate each other or diametrically disagree, and then by the end, they're not only colleagues and working together, but potentially friends. And then the third element that would make convergence unique is some sort of back-end long-term benefits. So Carol brought up the idea of certification and licensure for members. I didn't get a response, but it was my idea, so I'll say it, was the idea of some kind of community membership where you know that you've been through the same unique process as a number of other groups who have used Convergence and therefore have access to some kind of web page with materials or networking events or things like that, so that it becomes a greater community.
Huh, that's great. Wonderful, thank you. Table 6.
Okay, hi everybody. We started thinking about the pitch and thinking about the variability of a pitch based on who you end up pitching to. So we thought about having a foundational pitch, and then, kind of shifting given who we end up targeting. An example of who that target could be would be an affinity group. We had a long conversation about foundations and affinity groups and how they might be excellent targets. Second, in thinking about what would be in the pitch, we thought about how it was necessary to differentiate, just kind of what separates Convergence from all the other actors in this field. We thought about the opportunity that a Convergence process offers for prioritization in groups in which you might send out a membership survey, but you're not really able to elicit preferences or priorities. But through a Convergence process, you might have a better way of doing that. It would allow for increased brainstorming among members of different groups, and then also to a point about durable relationships beyond just an initial negotiating process, but into the future. And then finally, we thought about thinking of training by Convergence or consulting as a core competency that organizations could really value, and thinking about the lifelong learning piece of it and the necessity of that as things change, as culture and communities change. And potentially, we could offer a certificate or some sort of credential associated with training or consulting. And
Wonderful.
that's, anything else?
Thank you.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, table 8, final word on pitch.
Let's see, what in the world did we talk about, guys? Let's see. I think what we were really getting to was pitch, and this might be a little bit different than the previous speaker. There, in our opinion, was a real commonality between all of the projects that we've entered upon, and that commonality is the multi-stakeholder. And really believe you've got to define multi-stakeholder. We really came up with, we'll use an analogy that Will came up with that I think is important. Executive branch versus legislative branch. That in the legislature, you're always going to have a lot of stakeholders, all of whom have the power to say no. Sometimes it's a little no, and sometimes it's a big no, but they all have that power. So if we're going to be looking at organizations and trying to define which one is most suitable for a convergence process, we have to look, first of all, do they have multi-stakeholders? That would be a number one requirement. And then how do we talk to all of these organizations? And we could start out a discussion by describing really what pain it is that they're feeling. And just to summarize, they're in uncontrollable chaos because everybody is going in a bunch of different directions, and there doesn't seem to be any way of bringing anybody together. And we can say, because we're unique, we can say we have the process that will allow you, with a good deal of work, but will allow you to bring everybody together and move farther than you ever dreamed of.
That's wonderful. That's a great note to close on. Thank you. Well, first of all, for those that were concerned, I know, Rachel, you didn't get through your full report. Please know that staff around the table have been taking copious notes, so we will get all of that, and we're also going to ask you to turn in the sheets that you were making notes on to the staff person at your table, so we will collect all of that. It sounds, you came up with amazing ideas, and I know we only heard half of them, so thank you so much for digging your teeth into some of these really tricky issues. Much appreciated. I'm now going to turn the podium over to our board chair to help us think about building a sustainable organization, Jean Molino. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello again, everyone. Sometime during my remarks, the team will be, and they started, passing around a little handout. Hold on to it, don't lose it. I will tell you in a few minutes what I would like you to do with that. I'd like to start by thanking you all for sharing your day with us. I'm sure everyone is busy with life and work and everything else, and we deeply appreciate your taking the time to be here. And for those of you who are first-timers, kicking in tires, as Rob likes to say, I really like that expression. I hope you've been finding these sessions interesting and even inspiring, and hope we get to see you again, including at our event in October. So as you know, the subject is sustainability, and please indulge me. I'd just like to take a minute on context, and these are themes you have heard from other speakers today, but I think useful, important to have in mind as we turn our attention to funding and sustainability. I expect, I may be wrong about this, but I suspect that many of you in the room would agree with me that there's real urgency in this moment, and that our collective ability, our societal ability to break through differences and to work respectfully and productively with individuals and organizations with very diverse perspectives has deteriorated. We're deeply polarized, and partisanship at the extreme is simply getting in the way. At the same time, I expect many of you, I think perhaps it's a reason why you're here, even if you haven't thought of it in these terms, but I suspect many of you, like I do, believe that under the right conditions, carefully managed conditions, under which trust is very, very purposefully and patiently built and maintained, that people of goodwill, however firmly held their opposing opinions and worldviews might be, will find a way, will even want to find a way to common ground and problem solve together. And there are many, many, many people of goodwill out there who really are hungering for solutions and want to be part of the answer, but they're kind of stuck. I mean, stuck in a moment, stuck in a mindset that makes it really hard to know how to even start the conversation in a safe way with the other, if you will. And that's where this organization comes in. And so we now have this track record, I think we should feel very, very good about, where we've worked successfully with stakeholders of diverse, often opposing ideologies and interests, and who came to whatever the issue was with a lot of skepticism, maybe even cynicism about their ability to work with one another. And we've worked over time to build trust across these groups to find shared goals and commitment to action. And in many cases, as you've heard from some of the speakers, we've also developed ongoing relationships and alliances that continue to yield dividends even after our work is done. And you've heard also from many folks today about some of the very exciting work that's underway now and new ideas for new projects. And each one of these is a critically important topic, right? And there's no shortage of critically important topics. And it seems to me that there's very little evidence out there in the world that absent an approach like this, we're going to start seeing solutions at scale. And so I have come to believe over the period of time I've been really thinking about this and connected with this organization, that this approach to problem solving is actually essential. It's essential to the effective functioning of our society at all levels, not just at the government policy setting level where it's very evidently important, but really in all spheres of engagement where we have to work with one another and on all topics of consequence. And the more examples we can build over time and cite to show and demonstrate how this particular approach yields results, the more it will take root beyond our discrete projects as a way forward, that moonshot we heard about before. So thankfully, there are lots of other organizations that promote collaborative problem solving, but there's no group that's doing exactly what Convergence does, the hard work of actually convening groups and building coalitions and solutions. So that's why I have chosen to support Convergence, financially and otherwise. And many of you have heard me say this. I mean, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of remarkable not-for-profit organizations out there doing great work in the world, but this one's unique, I believe, and it holds such extraordinary promise and embodies a mindset and approach that can yield benefits in so many ways across so many topics and affecting so many lives. And I really think that's a pretty wonderful and remarkable and promising thing, but it takes real funding to do that. So we will, of course, continue to seek funds for each project that we choose to undertake based on interests of foundations and other institutional donors, and there's a lot of uncertainty built into that. But what we really, truly need to do is to develop more general funding to support many, many things, but importantly, to support the research and development of potential new projects, which is a very time and labor-intensive exercise. Even in determining not to undertake a project. There's a whole lot of work that goes into that. We need general funding to cover all of our general expenses, our staff, our wonderful staff, in events like this, obviously, to develop the consulting and training capability you heard others talk about a little while ago, to support what I would call the replicability of the Convergence methodology and hopefully to generate some revenue. We need funding to increase our visibility, which is really important at this point, and just build an operating reserve for financial sustainability. So we have, as you would expect, set goals to meet all of these objectives, but the hard truth is that we're just not on a path at this point to meet these targets this year. And of course, there are efforts underway and a lot of hard work being done to try to close this gap. But we need to secure, as Rob said earlier in the day, at least another $2 million from sources not now identified to be reasonably well placed for the future. So we are facing a pretty significant gap. So we see this as what we call an all-hands-on-deck moment for all of us in a Convergence family to start to think more expansively, frankly, about what we can do, either in contributing financially, but not just that, but in introducing us perhaps to others who might find this work compelling, might themselves become donors over time, just to start thinking more expansively about what we can do at this stage. Of course, for those of you, and there are a number of you who are brand new, again, to Convergence and meeting us perhaps for the very first time today, we simply hope that what you see and what you hear resonates for you, and if and when a time might be right down the road, you join in these efforts and contribute in whatever way makes the most sense for you. For those of you who've been with us for a while, our LC members, our friends, we hope you will join in this intensified effort, I think is a good way to describe it, to raise the funds that we need, and again, importantly, to think about how to introduce us to others. We hope that everyone on the LC is making an annual contribution to Convergence of whatever magnitude is comfortable for you. And we also hope that during a time of this special campaign, which is still underway, you might consider making a stretch gift. I'll point out that in the packets on the table, there is a pledge sheet. And for those of you who feel inspired to contribute or commit to contributing today, that would be wonderful and deeply appreciated. But we also ask you to do one other thing today, and back to the handout that was being circulated as I took the podium. There's a sheet, and we're asking you to think about who you can connect us to. These might be folks with philanthropic capacity, influencers, just people with networks themselves. But really give this a think. We're about to take a break, so you got a little time to think about this. We will not reach out to anyone without talking to you first. We'll engage with you on whether and how to support you in any outreach. But we want to start the process of beginning to think about a list of individuals or organizations that you might be able to connect us to. So that's what that sheet is all about. And so we ask you to do that, and the development team will follow up and collect those. Obviously, if you think of names or have ideas after you've left here today and your drive home this evening or whatever, just give us a call or shoot us an email. And if you have other ideas for either things we might be doing that you haven't heard us talk about today, or other ways in which you can help, you might join our resource generation breakout table. I'm sure someone will be talking about the breakouts shortly, and you can share in that discussion and give us any additional ideas you might have. So again, thank you for joining us. Please do, though, take some time now to think about names and organizations that you might be able to connect us to where you have a direct relationship or even indirectly. And again, we'll be reaching out to have a conversation with you about whether, how, and all of that. But I just want to get that process started. And again, for those of you who may feel inspired, there is a sheet in the packet as well for with respect to contributions, either general contributions or special contributions that you might make at this point. So we would appreciate that too. So with that, thank you, and you can take some of the break time.
Take a break, I'm going to just tell
Yeah.
you what to think about.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish. You done?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Jean. Okay, before you take a break, what we want to do is have you give a little bit of thought to something, and I'm going to set you up for the post-break session. We have a session called New Horizons, and I want to remind you that we view you guys as our brain trust. And we want your insights into stuff that we're looking at now, stuff that we're thinking about now. And we've got 4 different tables that we're going to have. Researching new projects, and I'll get to those in a second. Informing our diversity DEI work, and also efforts to increase our visibility. Now, what we've got here is Russell Crum now, who's been examining the issue of housing affordability, is going to be at table 1. At table 4, it will be Stephanie McGency, who's been doing a ton of work assessing the viability of gun safety as an issue for us. So those of you who are interested in either of those, go to those tables. Table 6, which is going to be informing Convergence's diversity, equity, and inclusion work, led by Amanda and Sharona. If you're interested in that topic, please go there. And Table 8, greater visibility and support of our work. You've heard a lot today about, and Jean certainly just referenced this, Doozy and Susan Jerison will be leading that conversation. So we want you to do after the 10-minute break is go pick a topic that's of best interest, greatest interest to you. The Convergence leader will take you through what we're going to be doing there. And at the end of that conversation, the Convergence leader will report back very briefly on a couple of the key themes that came out of that conversation. So when you're on the break, in addition to identifying 15 to 20 people we need to reach out to, if you can also give some thought to which one you would like to go to, that would be great. Doozy? Oh, Doozy? Oh, Doozy is holding it. Yes, and just spend a lot of time putting names down. Okay, we're just going to take about a 10-minute break and then get back to work because I want to make sure we finish close.